from Hollywood, California, the horror capital of the world, the Boulet Brothers, creatures of the night.
Welcome, foolish mortals, to a brand new episode of the Boulet Brothers Creatures of the Night. As always, we will be your ghostly guides through this evening's program, the Boulet Brothers, your queens of darkness, Swanthula.
And Drakmorda.
Well, welcome, Drak. Let's talk about what has happened since we were last at this table. What happened since last week?
Last week? Well, I think the most interesting thing that happened last week was that we were going to do a haunting of history on this episode. And we went on a little adventure to explore it. So we're like, we can make a little TikTok about it and all this stuff. And it's a place called the Hall of Horrors in Joshua Tree. And we went there only to discover that there's nothing horror about the Hall of Horrors.
It's a whole lot of a nothing burger.
Yeah.
Like when I saw Hall of Horrors on the map, and we have like a little video. Maybe we'll put it out there as a little.
It just ends really like, abruptly. Yeah, it was like, this didn't go anywhere.
It's a bomb. It's a whiff. It's a. It goes nowhere. But when we did see it, like, oh my God, the Hall of Horrors, that's where we're going. And then we got there and we're like, oh my God, the Hall of Horrors, this is nothing. Like, there's nothing here.
It was no vortex, I'll tell you that.
Absolutely not. Nothing weird was happening there.
I mean, it has there's like cool tunnels and stuff that you can go through. And I think that's what makes it interesting. There's a back side of it that I don't think we went to because we were like, it's hot.
The terrain there is so unreal for anyone who hasn't been to Joshua Tree. I recommend it because you'll never see anything like it on Earth. And you know what? It brings me back to the intro of, I believe it's season 2, episode 4, when we're out in the desert and the alien ship lands and Israel's abduction and all that. It kind of gives that. It's like a Martian landscape. It's super alien, very strange.
Yeah, I remember we, in earlier seasons, would often go out to places like that to film. Like we did the zombie challenge for season 1 out there. And yeah, it's just, I would say if you're going to go, do not go now. It would be the worst decision you could make. You should go in the fall or the spring for sure.
It's the heat.
Yeah.
And you know what? Don't follow in our footsteps either. Don't ever go out there and drag. It is living hell. It really is the Hall of Horrors.
We also finished our last song in the photo shoot for our EP.
Yes, we did.
That's exciting. How are you feeling about it?
I feel so good because I did not want to do that fucking photo shoot. I was like, oh my God, I do not want to get in drag. I do not want to paint this face. I do not want to do this. Then the photo shoot started happening and I was like, this is kind. Like, oh my God, yes, we look good. I'm like, this is going to be amazing. And I love all these Halloween inspired images. And it ended up being really fun.
Yeah. So how do you feel about the music after we recorded the last 2 pieces?
Well, just to spill a little bit of tea, our last recording session was a little bit of like a re-record because we had the 5th song on the EP finished and it just wasn't sitting as well as the other 4 because the other 4 are so solid. We love them both, but that 5th one needed a little TLC. And when we went back and re-recorded, I was like, God, I hope this is not a waste of time. And it really wasn't. I think we ironed out all of the weird little quirks that we were uncomfortable with, and now I'm really excited to hear the finished product.
I am too. I think people are going to like it, and it's going to come out just in time. I'm not going to explain why, but this fall we have a lot of stuff happening, a lot of stuff popping off at once. So we've been a little bit hibernated, but we're working on everything in the background that's going to be coming out this fall.
Yeah, because you have to pace yourself, right? Like especially setting yourself up for the fall season because the show comes out, because we are the Queens of Darkness and Halloween, and we have a big ball. Like there's a lot of media and a lot of stuff to put out there, and you have to time it.
Yeah, which brings me to my next point, which is people, quote, fans, I like to call them little toxic wastes, online who harass us about release the promo, and it's really nasty and angry, right?
It's disrespectful.
It's so obnoxious. I'm like, it has not even been a year. Calm down.
Yeah.
They give you like anxiety, like it's late. You're late. You're going to lose the momentum. I'm like, what are you talking about? There is no momentum. The show's wrapped in January, Like, what do you mean? Like, we always take a break. And then you release stuff and they'll be like, well, where's the next part? And I'm like, It always comes out like that stuttered. So I don't get it. I'm like, I'm glad that people are excited about it, but don't be a dick.
Oh,
right?
no, absolutely. And it comes out in many ways, too. Like these dismissive comments where we're putting something out there, whatever it might be. Something stupid, something silly, a little like the Oregon Vortex. And the response will be something like, great, Mom, but like release the promo. And I'm like, if you were in front of me, I might slap your face a little bit.
I'm like, if you are here for Dragula content alone, go follow the Boulet Brothers Dragula on all social media and get the fuck off my page.
I'm glad you said it.
I just kind of had to vent a little bit because they get to vent all day long and we don't get to retaliate. But here we do.
It's true. You know, just to put it out there, part of it is something that I can appreciate because I think fans are excited, right? They want the next piece of Boulet content or whatever we're creating. But I can promise you this, it's all coming in time and it's so good. And the wait is going to be worth it.
The wait is so going to be worth it. And it's still going to be out earlier than it normally is. So I'm just like, calm down. Let us do our thing. We always do a good job with it. This season is so good. Mm-hmm. It's so good, and I cannot wait for people to start to see it. Because I even forgot, you know, because you film it, and then a couple of months go by, and then you kind of relook at everything, and I'm like, oh my God, we really killed ourselves this season with like bringing everything. We just didn't let anything slip through the cracks.
No, I think we covered all of our bases. And it's kind of funny. I want to kind of cue the listeners into what it's like to be in this room where we are, like Boulet headquarters. Because if we look over to my left, Drax right, and just behind Ian, there's a field of monitors where we can see the entire season sort of being built and put together. And you get reminded like, episode 3, and that's when we were there, and like, oh my God, that's about to happen to her, and it's really cool.
All right, well, why don't we take a quick break and we will be right back.
Welcome back to the Crypt Uglies. It's time we are joined by our cadaverous co-host, Ms. Ian DeVogler. Ian, welcome back to the show.
Ooh, thank you, Swan. Thank you, Drac. Feels good to be back.
Yeah, so we talked about our week. What was your week last?
My week has been fantastic. I do want to say that I feel a little naked, a little exposed, because Swan revealed that I'm sitting here in the studio. Normally, I'm locked in my cage, but today I get to sit at the table, and I'm very, very happy about it.
Yes, well, you've been behaving, so don't fuck it up.
Ooh, I'll try not to, but with this episode's review, no promises. My week has been really, really good. I have been doing a lot of streaming. I have a big project that I'm working on in October that I'm very excited about. So just kind of getting my ghouls together. And honestly, this is the highlight of my week, is I get to see y'all.
Yay.
I agree. It's a lot of fun. I'm glad that we get together and do this still. All right, well, let's dig into this episode's news updates from the world of Hollywood and horror. And I wanted to ask you all, I was going to say, should we add drag to that? Because I feel like in the beginning we said the worlds of Hollywood and horror and drag.
Yeah.
But what is the drag news? There's no drag news.
Say, I mean, there's never really drag news.
No.
It just always is fierce mama, work, yes, God, tongue pop. I mean, the only drag news I really care about is the drag news that you cover in the intro. So
The only drag news I've been caring about recently are Chapel Rowan's performances. Because bitch is a drag queen, and I kind of am obsessed with her right now.
Are you into a little chapel?
I am into a little chapel. I, like so many other like middle American white women or little girls, love that Pink Pony Club. Like, I can't get enough.
Yes.
To me, it's becoming a torment, though. It's too much.
Oh
no, it's so good.
It's
and then
a lot. Do you? What do you?
I am neutral chapel territory. Like, I don't want the Rowanites or whatever they're called to, like, storm my castle walls.
That sounds so biblical.
I know. The one song I can't deal with, though, is that one. It's all over TikTok and Instagram. It's like, think you can stop what we do? I doubt it.
I thought you were going to talk about hot like Papa John's. I was like,
wait,
no,
what?
No.
Yeah, that lyric is not good.
I think she's cool. She has a great voice. She's interesting, but
yeah, and her looks are very much, I think, on the drag spectrum.
Very much exposure drag.
For sure. Oh my God.
Oh, stars and garters.
My favorite
Very much level 1 drag.
My favorite comment about Pink Pony Club was like, oh my God, I can't get enough of this. Forget a playlist. I need this song in my ass.
Honey, that's a Tijuana donkey show.
The drag news, there's none, right? Look, what is it? Some drag race person fought another person. Like, what is it? There's
Or someone basically did blackface and then...
Ooh.
we don't want to talk about any of that.
That would cause us to have to pay attention to other drag queens, which generally we don't do. There's only a few.
And 2 of them are sitting at this table.
Well,
so-
you'll see another one join us again for the 6th season of the show.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Well, anyways, so now that we decided drag is terrible, let's move on to the world of Hollywood and horror.
Well, this is actually perfect because... Welcome back to the Creatures of the Night and Weekly News, bringing you the latest in all things spooky, boofy, icky, creepy, and terrifying from the epicenter of cinema, Hollywood, California, the horror capital of the world. To begin tonight's broadcast, I want to provide a brief spoiler alert for the recent blockbuster smash Deadpool and Wolverine. For those who want to avoid spoilers, you have approximately 5 seconds to cast an anti-spoiler magic spell. And now that it's just us sassy cinephiles, our first story is about resident vampire queen of shade, Miss Noxzema Jackson. Yes, Wesley Snipes has officially broken 2 Guinness World Records for his return as Blade in the recent cameo-filled romp in the MCU. The 2 records, longest career as a live-action Marvel character and longest gap in between live-action Marvel appearances, are now held by Wesley Snipes, although the records were previously reported to be potentially attributed to Hugh Jackman when the film was announced.
Who's making these awards up?
They're giving them out for anything.
Seriously.
We should try to get an award for the show.
Well, we were talking about the Dragula Awards on the drive-in.
Yeah, we were talking about potentially doing a Dragula Awards. I feel like it's time to do it.
Could
Maybe
be
tie it
fun.
in with a live event.
Yes.
Maybe a premiere or a crowning or something like that.
I love it. We can finally dump some blood on Victoria.
Ian could be on the red carpet.
Yeah,
my God.
the audience can vote in and give their voice to things.
It's so cute.
It is kind of cute. Let's talk about Miss Noxzema though appearing, because there were a lot of really cool cameos in Deadpool and Wolverine.
You and I sort of talked a little bit about them, but that was the one that I legitimately shrieked.
Well, Drac kind of filled me in after the show. Like, this is not very long ago, and it was like, oh, all of the IP that basically Disney dropped after the acquisition, they put in that weird limbo where no characters return from. And how smart. It's just really cool writing and nostalgic too. Like, I was like, oh my God, that's right. She was Elektra. Totally forgot about that. I'm like, oh my God, that guy Channing, whatever. No, that Gambit was terrible.
He never actually was in the movie. He was always rumored and supposed to be.
Yeah, that was his big passion project. I was reading and it's like that has been in development hell for years and years and years, and they finally, I think it was like last year, he publicly spoke about it and was like, I was crushed. And I'm like,
in the meantime, after they decided not to use him for that, he spent the last 6 years at the Golden Corral apparently, because he is like, he don't look
She's
like Gambit
thick.
to me.
No,
she is.
That's
thick.
the thing. He had the accent down, but the look was wrong.
The
he
look
was too beefy.
terrible. His face was all smushed up. I was like, this is bad.
oh, I thought they were doing that on purpose. Like,
Why?
I thought it was supposed to be like purposefully bad. Like, this is why he never became like a part of the MCU.
If it was that smart, which I definitely think this movie is capable of doing, that would be cool. But I don't know. I just think
I'm not sure either.
Did y'all like Deadpool and Wolverine?
Oh yeah, it was really fun.
Okay,
Yes.
cute.
I liked it a lot. I mean, the cameos are always fun. I wish there was more. I did hear there was some kind of rumor about this being something to do with the future of the Marvel universe.
I
but
heard that too.
I don't know.
I heard that the future is going to be like the next, I don't know, sequence or era or whatever is all mutants focused. And so they were trying to like put all of these cameos in and basically like, here's everyone that you've ever cared about. And now this is done. And now we've like teased Wolverine, like we're going back to mutants.
Now, what will they do? Do you think because they're bringing the X-Men in to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, do you think they will still use Hugh Jackman, or do you think they'll recast him?
I heard they're going to use him.
Till you're 90.
Wow.
Yeah. She literally resurrected her role as Wolverine with this movie.
Totally.
And
Well,
I mean, it's like the #1 movie ever created in the world.
I think it was the
forever.
most, it made the most money of any R-rated movie of all time, right?
I think weirdly, I think the 6th highest grossing opening weekend of all time.
Wow.
And I live because it's so queer and homoerotic.
Oh my
It's
God,
so gay.
it's so gay. It's like, that's my favorite part of the movie. I wasn't expecting it because like I like the Deadpool movies. I think they're fun, but the bromance sort of like at each other's throats nature from Wolverine and Deadpool, I was like, horny.
It's kind of weird though, because I feel like the appeal to that is, I don't know how many straight friends you have, but any straight guy friends you have, all they do is
They're
joke about
so
being
gay.
all day. That's their whole thing.
Yeah.
So I feel like this movie is sort of trying to dig into that and appeal to people that you can relate to it a little bit. And I'm like, I mean, it's good, and then I'm like, is it good or is it bad?
It's weird because I think that if we want to dig into sort of like the actual politics of it, it's like, yeah, like what does this say? Is this good for queer people, or is this actually like, you know, straight guys who make fun of queer people? But isn't Deadpool sort of canonically like bisexual?
Yeah.
And then I mean, Hugh Jackman is a tap dancing fairy, and I love her for it. I mean, she's straight, but I feel like she gets a pass.
Well, Wolverine also has been rumored to be bi potentially in comics. So.
I mean, when you're immortal,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do, honey? Show me that adamantium bone.
Oh my God, I can't believe you just said that.
I had to.
Yes, you did.
Up next, we have 2 additions to our favorite yearly event. Yes, of course, I'm referring to Halloween Horror Nights here in Hollywood, with the announcement that 2 new experiences will be coming to the parks to terrorize guests this year. Both attractions are classics, but with a fairly broad appeal, and I cannot wait for them to start. But first, fans of Leatherface and her masked drag will be able to join the family in an original story in the Leatherface legacy in a gore-filled slaughterhouse, which may not be the most original, but definitely feels appropriate. The second, which I think might appeal more to my co-hosts, is titled Universal Monsters Eternal Bloodlines, and centers around the all-female monster squad, Bride of Frankenstein, Dracula's daughter, She-Wolf of London, and the undead mummified Egyptian princess Ankh-Su-Namun.
Wow, I'm so excited.
I saw some concept art from it, and it looks really cool.
I can't wait. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like that one has the potential to actually be amazing.
Yeah. And are they doing that in both parks?
I heard that it's going to be in both.
Oh.
yeah,
You
so
know,
I-
Victoria's in Florida is going to be like so much better.
Oh my God, I saw this promo video for Halloween Horror Nights Orlando, and there's this part, it's like, something, Victoria Frankenstein, and they go up the wall, and it's literally Victoria from her, like, Filth finale. I was like, you little bitch.
Oh my God, I love that.
I don't think people know at home. I mean, they've made jokes about it, like Miss Universal Studios and stuff on the show. But Victoria works at Universal Studios and makes so much of that content that you see at Halloween. It's really cool.
Super talented. And finally, for a roundup of new projects announced for film and television, Jordan Peele has announced that he'll be helming a return of the incredible reality television show Scare Tactics. Fangoria Studios will be producing 3 live-action adaptations of the horror manga GOAT, Junji Ito. And for fans of the zombie genre who like their zombies with a little bit of laughter in addition to blood, gore, and brains, we'll be delighted to know that Shaun of the Dead is returning to theaters for its 20th anniversary later this month.
That's interesting because we were literally at dinner with the guy that is producing Scare Tactics the other night.
Really?
Yes,
Yeah.
and we were all
Oh my
talking all these different
God.
things, and the stuff he was talking about, I was like, what show are you talking about? Because I'm like, this sounds kind of in line with what we do,
Yeah,
you
totally.
know? Yeah.
But, and also at the way that it was riding the fence on funny and offensive, you know, kind of like
in the
right
original
but
versions?
wrong. No, the way that he was describing like new episodes, I was like, wait, this sounds like it came out of like the late 90s or the early 2000s before, you know, everybody became such.
So politically correct and aware.
Yeah,
all the
you would
time,
say
of
that.
course.
I was going to say something else, but we'll say that.
I always remember this one episode of the original Scare Tactics where it was this person who, I don't know what they were coming in for, but basically they were like, oh, just hang out in this like doctor's examination room. And then you see this like pregnant woman like run by and she's like, what is that? And then you hear all these screams, and then they had this like total Nosferatu ghoul like covered in like pregnancy juices running on all fours.
Like a small person.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, what the hell?
Man, that's exactly the kind of shit I'm talking about.
I love it. I can't wait. Like, I hope it's good. Like, I think that we need a little more scare in the world.
I've always wanted to do that stuff with the competitors on the show. Remember, we've talked about
Yeah.
like if we don't tell them and it becomes kind of a haunted house. But they're already so scared, right? They're so trembling in the corner the first 3 episodes anyways, and they really think that we're going to do stuff to them at all time. It's only until like episode 7 where they're like, oh, they're only going to do stuff to us when they're filming.
Well, I feel like the other thing too is like they're either super scared or they do the thing that I really dislike where they're like, I'm tough. I'm not scared.
yeah.
I'm like, come on. It's fun to be scared.
Seriously.
Thank you for those updates from the world of Hollywood and horror. But now it's time to move on to this episode's Junior Mints Movie Club review. Tonight we're doing another double feature, and we are talking about the 1955 sci-fi horror The Quatermass Experiment, as well as the sequel, Quatermass 2. Let's talk about the word Quatermass.
Is it Quatermass? Is it Quatermass? Is it
I'm like, just
Quatermass?
Girl, put an R in there, please. Like I was just saying
Somewhere.
Quatermass, and it doesn't even sound that wrong when you say Quatermass. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
But then when you're aware that there's no R, you're like, well, I don't want to sound ignorant. So how are they saying it? And it was like impossible.
I thought there was a misspelling in the poster. I was like,
Oh,
where's
I
the
know.
R?
Because we've been talking about this as a potential episode idea for what, like maybe 2-ish weeks?
Yeah.
And it's always been, we'll do Quatermass. And then I looked at Quatermass, and then I heard him say Quatermass. And I'm like, wait, what?
Exactly.
You're like, how much of this is his accent? Because it was so bizarre anyways.
Okay.
It's like a
Okay.
New York version of like a New York accent, a heavy New York accent mixed with a British accent.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've
Thank
never heard
you.
that before.
I was confused. I was confusion. I was like,
Yeah.
wait. Because then they also talk about, it's a British American research facility. And I was like, where is this guy from? Like, what is
Seriously,
this?
yeah.
Right in the middle.
Oh, right, British America.
So let me talk a little bit about what this movie is for people that don't know, because this is a very old movie. I think if you look on any top horror list that are like, these are the most influential horror movies of all time, you will see the series of movies on that list, because I think it's one of the first sci-fi horror movies that were ever made. And, you know, a lot of people argue about is sci-fi horror, you know, we've all had that discussion before. But obviously with this one, this is a scary movie.
Yeah.
So, you know, it is a little older, so I know some of our audience probably don't want to sit down and watch a black and white movie that has bad sound, but it's worth it if you can sit down and watch it.
Mercifully, both of the films are less than 90 minutes. So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, we can do this.
Couple of quick facts before we get into it. It's kind of a trilogy. There were 3 movies. We decided to watch 2 of them. There was a third film, Quatermass and the Pit, but all 3 films were based on 3 British TV series by the same name. So, you know, when they do TV differently in the UK, they had a whole series that was the first one, the second one.
Yeah.
So it was like 3 different seasons of a show.
And then they use that weird camera filter because when you go to the UK and you watch TV, the shit looks different than it does in our country.
That's true.
Yeah, accurate.
And so then Hammer Horror acquired the rights and made them into movies, and they pretty much follow the same story, but it's widely regarded as some of the best horror out there, and especially in influencing stuff like Alien directly and other movies like that. You can see the influence.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I thought it'd be good to go back and do a little horror history.
I think that was a great idea. Thank you, too. A little interesting tidbit I came across is that when it was released in the U.S., 1955, the Quatermass Experiment, the original, it was actually titled The Creeping Unknown. It had a different title. And the same thing with the second one, Quatermass Experiment 2, but this one was called Enemies from Space.
and that was when they released it in the United States,
Yeah.
they changed the name. So, yeah. Which maybe if we had looked up those movies, it might have been easier to watch, because these were hard to watch in terms of finding where it was streaming.
Oh, I watched them both on YouTube.
You did? I
Yeah.
didn't know 2 was on YouTube.
Yeah, and here's the thing is I searched really hard because I was like, oh, God, I don't want to show up and be like, I watched Quatermass 2, Electric Boogaloo, the Enemies from Space edition, and be like, Ian, that's not correct. So I pulled up 3 different versions. I compared them. I did my research.
You mean like when we watched The Thing?
I didn't want to say it, but you
This
know.
movie is so modern and fabulous.
The effects are amazing. It really holds
How did
up.
they do this in the 80s?
How did the guy from Game of Thrones get so old when he was young?
Damn.
All right, so let's talk about this first film. We start with this rocket, right? This rocket has landed and it's just coming in the atmosphere, so it's super hot. And it was really weird to see all those old school fire trucks and the crowd, right?
Yeah.
I thought the whole scene was super creepy. It felt like Roswell to me, like, because, you know, when you think about UFOs and technology and all this stuff, you think modern, but when you put them in those time periods, I think it's extra creepy.
Yeah. When we think back to things like Roswell or like the UFO kind of craze in the 50s and 60s, and obsession with kind of like space and horror, it's like that, where today the public would never have that much access to a crash site or a downed rocket. But there's like hordes of just common city folk just like right there at the edge of the fence, like just a few feet from the rocket. And I think that proximity, it kind of ratchets up the anxiety.
Absolutely. I love the moment where Quatermass is saying, like, I need everyone out of here. Everyone get away. And they sort of push people away. But then the second that the doors open, it's like that huge rush of people back. And it made the scene. And actually, I just to say this, I love the first film.
Yeah,
like, I adore it.
I thought it was really successful because I like halfway through, I was like, damn, this is creepy. Like this is actually scary. And I think I wasn't ready for it to be able to do that to me. You know, I'm like, okay, let's watch this old 50s movie. But I'm like, wait, this is kind of sophisticated and really cool.
I think the scoring was excellent too.
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of times there wasn't any, right? So when they used music, it was very effective, and it almost seemed like modern art house sort of mute. Did you think so?
Absolutely. There's the scene where they're in the exam room and they're doing the examination on I think his name is Karun, who is the astronaut who comes back. And the music starts out almost as his heartbeat, and then it starts to get faster and faster and faster. I was like, oh my God, this is really effective. Like, I feel like I'm right here.
I think too, the shots were really great. It was very atmospheric, and they choose to do a lot of big, wide pullbacks.
They're almost like theatrical.
Yeah,
totally.
I felt the same way, but it reminded me about Roswell and how that all went down. Because when I was out of college, we went to Roswell and looked around and talked to people. This was before it was like such a tourist trap. Sure. We found this old guy who was like, I was there. He was like the whole town. And he was old. He was like 90 something. He was like the whole town. We all went there. Everybody saw it that was alive then. And so it reminded me a lot of the scene.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's interesting to note the people in the town, because I think when we get to the second film, that's my only, it's a complaint that I have with the second one that I definitely don't with the first. Like, I think the first one feels very real. All of the scenes feel realistic. And then even when we get to sort of the big finale, I was like, God, if this happened here, global panic. Mama Big Scary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So just to kind of round up the story in short, this is the first manned rocket in space. It returns by remote, and there's only one survivor when there were 3 astronauts that went up there. And you see their suits, and you learn that there was some type of organism that breached the ship, and Quatermass pretty much knows everything, so she just breaks it on down in like speeches. You're like, girl, we're watching the
he
same
gets out
shit.
a beaker and a ruler, and he's like, oh, I know what it is.
Thank God, though, because when we watch the footage, which I kind of live for the way they do it, where there's editing on the onboard camera, and he mentions, oh, of course, we have the onboard edit. Thank God for that. And I'm like, yeah, really, thank God for that, honey.
Yeah, so we don't have to sit here and watch hours and days of footage to find something that happens. So what we see is Quatermass breaks it down and informs everybody that there must have been some kind of organism that breached the ship and dissolved 2 of the other astronauts. And now this is where it gets a little confusing. I think the language and the really talking fast and it coming from a different era, some of it was a little hard to understand. But what I gathered was they found some of those small little biological traces in like the exhaust or whatever. And they're like, this could be a part of the human. This is what we now have left of their body. And that was chilling.
Yeah, I thought the most chilling part for me was the slow burn reveal of what are we dealing with. Because I think that when you watch a lot of old films, not that they're not sophisticated, but sometimes it'll be like, kabam, it's zombies. And then it's a lot of people screaming, and it's a lot of this sort of the simplicity of the time. But this one, when Karun grabs the cactus, and then we see his hand, but we don't know what's going on, and it's that reveal of like, oh, whatever this goo is or whatever that cellular organism, like it's mutating, it's growing.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is actually extremely well done. Like, wow.
I thought we were going back to. Remember when we reviewed The Thing, and we mentioned it earlier, but the original, the black and white one, the very first The Thing, when it was like a plant-based monster in black and white.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm seeing some parallels with that story for sure.
Absolutely.
With the cactus.
So they found this little piece of Karun, right? That was like some alien blob, right? That fell off of him or something.
Well, he continues to mutate, and then they do find a little piece. And I'm clarifying because this scene was very special to me when they
the
brought
arm or the sample?
the sample.
Okay.
On the
Yeah.
ship, right?
When they bring it back to the lab and they put it in the case.
Right.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
it starts to like bubble, and then it grows, and then it breaks out and tries to like launch across the lab to eat the mice, and
Oh my
it
God.
dies on the floor from
Yeah.
that, for having no food. So that was pretty creepy and kind of very also reminiscent of The Thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I love when they go, well, I hate that animals die in the film, but I do love that they're like, look at this tiger-shaped rug on the ground. Look at this weird little donkey on the ground. Like, they've all had their goo sucked out of them or whatever. But I actually really like that when we see Karun approaching kind of like the little girl who's like having the tea party, who is the most well-spoken character in the film, by the way. She's the only one who enunciates.
Yeah.
And he doesn't attack her. He like sort of like, destroys the tea set, but then has this almost moment of humanity and steps
Yeah.
away. And I was like, wow, this is actually really considering like, humanity and like, what part of Karun is left here when
Yeah.
we're looking at this alien.
Not to mention the last time we saw a monster and a girl was Frankenstein, where he basically suplexed her into the water and killed her.
There was another shot that I
Holy
thought
hell.
was really cool, and it was right around this point of the movie, and it's before Karun breaks into the zoo and kills the animals. And we see all of these shots of the monkeys, the baboons, we have the lions, and the animals are reacting in a way that like kind of makes the hair go up on the back of your neck. It kind of felt supernatural. This is definitely alien. It's just this slow pan into the forest's edge, right? Like this wooded area. And you see like the littlest trace of him in there, but he's like super mutated. That shit was scary.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that was maybe the most impressive scene in the whole film. I didn't expect to see that kind of cinematography in this old of a movie.
Yeah.
It was really good.
It was.
So why don't you wrap up the end, because it's
Okay,
wild.
so yeah, so
Oh, yeah.
we culminate in, and I live for the location because it's like he could be anywhere in London, but he's at Westminster Abbey, right? Which is such a classic landmark. So Karun has broken into Westminster Abbey. He is gigantic at this point, just this mutated trash heap biological blob with tentacles, and it looks part animal, part plant, and everything. And so Quatermass jumps in and basically breaks it on down again. He's like, well, what we're going to have to do here is run the electricity from outside and get the over to the cast scaffolding and get ready. And I need everybody out of here right now. And then they basically throw the wires down on the scaffolding and
Yes.
like electrocute it to death till the remains of Karun just burst into flame. And then we're left with this ominous line that I'm not going to recall, but to paraphrase, it's like,
Yeah.
it's over, but how long will it last? Or something like that.
Well,
setting us up.
Until the next movie. That's how long it
Until
lasts.
2 years later.
But let's kind of talk about why this movie was effective, because there are so many, movies from the 50s. I do think with our attention spans and our reaction to film now, sometimes it can be hard to watch movies
Yeah.
this old. But this one still was scary, right?
Yeah, I'd say so for sure.
Yeah, could you appreciate it, or was it like too old?
100% appreciated. This is, I think, actually a classic horror film, a classic sci-fi film that I would actually encourage everyone to watch. Like, I think that it's absolutely worth watching. And even though I wasn't scared by anything that's happening, I'm a jump scare queen, so I get scared from that.
Oh, I jumped several times in this.
Yeah,
I
which I was
did.
surprised.
Yeah.
Oh.
Even with gunshots or like something jumped out because I just, I'm a jumpy bitch.
We were engrossed.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah, I think that it's great. I think that the The writing is really excellent. And if you can sort of get past the old-timey, hey, everybody, nature of it, it's really, really cool.
Also, there's another aspect to kind of appreciate, or at least I do, is that it's kind of a time capsule in so many ways of the 50s and 60s. And I pay attention to just the decorations in the room, the furniture, their clothing very specifically, hairstyles, the way that women are treated and represented as opposed to the men. It's always like this subordinate role.
Yeah.
It's always like the nurturer.
Why don't you go put on a cup of coffee?
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, excuse you, don't talk to her like that.
I'll be right back.
Hey, whatever you want, Quatermass. Okay. I was gooped by the cigarette lighter in the car. I was like,
Old school style.
my God. What?
We recently were in a car that looked just like one of the cars in that film. And similarly, we were looking at everything. It was like, cigarette lighter.
Yeah.
Weird.
Artifact from an age gone by.
So I would double down on what you all have already said. I think if you are a student of horror, you should absolutely watch this movie. If you don't want to be a horror dunce, it is a must watch.
And if you don't want half of an education, you'll go on to watch Quatermass 2. Ooh.
And the reason we watched both of these movies was actually because of Quatermass 2. That's the one that shows up on all the lists. And I didn't want to watch part 2 without part 1 because I was like, I'm going to miss something. Of course, then I realized I wasn't going to miss anything because there's no connection.
Well, let's talk about that. Like 100%, there is no connection,
No.
right? We're talking about one kind of alien species and then another, right?
Yeah.
Very strange.
Well, you have the same actor playing Professor Quatermass, so that's the one consistent thing.
Yes.
And the monsters are obviously similar too. It's
yeah.
a similar thing, but he almost acts like he doesn't reference that he's experienced this before.
Yeah, the only reference to the first one is that he invites investigator Lomax or whatever, who's from the first movie. And there's kind of a little like blink and you'll miss it kind of nod to that. But otherwise, you can watch them completely independent.
Yeah, well, I don't know why he never was like, oh, well, we already dealt with this in this rocket. He's like, what could it be?
I wonder.
It is the same, ultimately, it's the same blob creature that gets created that was in the first one. So I'm like, I don't know why they decided to do that.
I don't either. I'm trying to remember in the first one how Karun. Oh, they basically just came back from space. So I guess maybe they didn't have any experience with the pods because in Quatermass 2, Quatermass is investigating these reports from this remote area of England. These meteorites have been landed in mass, like they're everywhere, and all this suspicious stuff is happening in that section of the country. And maybe we just didn't see any of those kind of spores or like incoming meteors in the first one, so maybe there was no conversation to be had about why these events are connected.
That I can see, although it's the same kind of fungus jumps from the thing into a human and takes over their body and they have the V shape and all that. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, the movie is only, like 82 minutes? So maybe they're like, hey, everybody, we don't have any time for this. We just have to, this is not for expressions. We have to get onto the ship. Come on, get onto the goo. Hey.
Exactly.
So do you want to walk us through like the overview?
Sure. As I described, meteorites are coming in and landing in this area of the English countryside, and Quatermass is there to investigate, and it's very close to a lab where he works, and they're working on the prototype of a moon base. So we see a little to scale model of this kind of futuristic, or I guess what people in the 50s thought as futuristic, this domed environments with tubes and pipes, and it's like, this we've designed so that when humans get to the moon, we can build a base and survive their atmosphere. And when he goes out to inspect the site with all the meteorites, he sees that his moon model, this base, has actually been built in the British countryside. And it's under the guise of, well, it is an artificial food creation and storage plant, which I thought was such a cool detail because I'm like, wow, they were talking about artificial food and basically GMO back in like 1957.
Yeah, it was giving very Soylent Green. And the thing I do really appreciate about this film is even though I knew gonna be aliens, it did keep me guessing. I was like, oh, are the humans being turned into food? Is this a process? Like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
And it's not until pretty much the last, and I think maybe this is a trope of the time period, like the last 20 minutes are like, explanation time. Like,
Yeah.
here's the whole movie.
He's like, wait a minute, I'll tell you what's going on.
Yeah.
Then we go back into all that.
Yes.
He's like, oh my God, there's blood dripping. They're using humans in the base to clog up the exhaust pipe because I'm pumping in oxygen. You're like, okay.
Okay. When there was blood, I was like, no, sweetie. We've seen that goo before. That's aliens. He's like, it is blood. I'm like, oh, never mind. It's in black and white. I'm stupid. I don't know.
Well, it's
Like,
kind of
okay.
gross. They were like, they used their bodies to pack them against the tube. I was like, this is disgusting.
Yeah.
This one, the thing I really do like about it is it's a sequel in, I think, the truest way a sequel should be. You know, it's like bigger, badder, larger scale, bigger threat, all these things. And I was actually surprised that there was quite a bit of like death and more. There's way more blood and gore in this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that scene specifically, I was like, ooh.
I think
what?
that this one had a larger budget, but I think the effects and sort of like the mood of the first one were more successful.
Oh. Yeah, I don't like Quatermass 2.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
No, I don't.
Oh.
I think Quatermass, bop. Quatermass 2, flop.
Okay.
Interesting. I was a little disenchanted with Quatermass 2, although I did like it because I saw the DNA of modern sci-fi horror in this movie, Alien,
Yeah.
and specifically a series that came out in the 80s that really kind of struck me as a child, which was called V.
Yes,
or
I kept
V for
thinking
Visitor.
about that. Yeah.
Oh my God. So
V
for
was so good. I can't believe no one's redone that.
someone needs to.
It was
'Cause
terrifying.
the shocking.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, we would probably watch it now and be like, girl, this is dumb. Because the effects would be weird. But when you're like 5 or something, the shit is scary. Yes, we were watching this kind of stuff that young. It's basically like there are aliens on Earth. They're lizard people, but they wear human skin.
Cool.
And at various points, like, you know, their skin gets pulled off and you see like the reptiles underneath. But there was this one scene. And of course, they're all like hot power suit 80s, big hair. The guy parted down the middle, hair flip and all that. And they're in this office building or some kind of conservative, really kind of uppity atmosphere. And they reach into this tank of like gerbils or guinea pigs or something and crane their necks back and just swallow them whole.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
We should look up the trailer and see if it's online. 'cause
Yeah,
I think
we
it would be worth
should.
checking out. But yeah, it feels very. I kept thinking about that show.
Did you?
Yeah, absolutely, because it's the same kind of vibe, you
Yeah.
know?
And just to kind of fast forward to the culmination here, we have these food plants, which are actually not food plants, and it's sort of like the reverse idea of the moon base. This is an alien base on Earth, and they're trying to change the atmosphere and create the environment where they can survive. And it's like ammonium based and all of these like kind of toxic chemicals to humans, but for them, that's what they breathe. And Quatermass figures that out, and they start sending in oxygen into the tanks in it. And this is what I had to read about post watching, because I did not get this from the context clues of the movie. Like, I'm like, you're supposed to be able to put this together as a viewer. No, is that these meteorites were coming down. They were infecting humans, and those humans kind of became part of like a hive mind. They were all sort of connected mentally to one organism. When that organism's life was starting to get threatened by the oxygen getting pumped into the domes, they all converged and
Yeah.
became one huge biological blob. Actually, 3 huge biological blobs, which I think is probably the coolest moment of Quatermass 2, when you see the giant bio trash heaps busting out of the domes and just attacking everything.
I
It's
when
so
you looked
cool.
through that little porthole window
That was cool.
and
Yeah.
saw it, I was like, oh, that's creepy.
Yeah, it was cool.
I mean, the storytelling kept me engaged the whole time. I did not know where it was going. And
Yeah.
I thought it was brilliant that, you know, they they were actually using this thing that they were going to use to go to the moon to host aliens on Earth. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it was very cool. And the culmination is there's a satellite, some type of like, I'm looking at it like a mothership out in space. And Quatermass's team was able to shoot a rocket up there like a bomb, destroy the satellite, and it just kills all of the, I guess, like the drones on Earth. So even people that had been infected with the V scars, the Vs just disappear and they don't remember anything. And we get another one-liner from Quatermass. Like, how long will this one gonna last? So we've been sets us up for Quatermass 3.
I love that.
Quatermass, God.
I think I'm going to have to watch 3.
I will too.
You will? Yeah,
Yeah,
just because I'm
absolutely.
a completionist. Like, I want to know what happened.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's no connection again.
I would be very. Although who knows? Because even like you were saying, Drac, the second one, even though they don't mention it, you could honestly say, oh, these organisms are either the same or they are very similar to one another. So maybe the third one will say, okay, let's wrap it on up, ladies.
It would be nice. It absolutely would. So listen, dear listeners, don't be dunces. Go out and watch Quatermass 1 and 2, and maybe even 3, because we're going to do it too. We'd like to encourage you to watch the films and share your thoughts with us. Tweet them or inbox us, or write to us at creatures@BouletBrothersDragula.com and let us know your thoughts. All right, my darlings, it's time we take another quick break, and we will be right back. All right, dear listeners, we have returned, and it's time we reach into our bag of mail for your listener questions. Ian, will you do the honors?
I'd love to. Danica from Big Bear, California asks, have to say, the latest episode with your top horror fashion icon looks gave me absolute life. My question is, what about the nurse/triangle head from Silent Hill? I feel like you see so many people cosplay them both.
You really do. You see them everywhere.
It's a great suggestion because
Yeah.
it's a really unusual look. You know, I think the triangle had more than the nurse, but still, both of them
No,
you
both of them.
recognize. Even if you're not familiar with the movies, you're like, oh, it's from that movie.
I think they absolutely belong on the honorable mention list.
Yeah, I do too.
Joe Taylor from Cincinnati, Ohio writes, the first time I heard the music of Orville Peck was on Resurrection. He has since become one of my all-time favorite artists. I think of him as a drag king. Is there any chance we could ever see a musical collaboration with you and him?
Maybe. I mean, we have an interest in country music. I personally love country music and know a ton of, but it's old, like 60s sort of country music. But anyways, I could see it happening, especially after our next album comes out and people get to see our style.
I think the new styling, could easily marry with something that Orville Peck puts out.
I am open to it. I'll say that.
And what a piece of cinematic genius Resurrection was with that song specifically. Like that ending of that project was so good.
So inspired.
Yeah.
Hannah from Kentucky writes, my partner and I are avid horror fans. My question for all of you is, what is the best horror movie theme, and why is it Killer Clowns from Outer Space? In all seriousness, what do you all think is the best horror theme?
Well, I'm not sure if you mean theme in terms of the theme song or the theme of clowns in space. So maybe we'll break down both, right? As far as a theme song, Killer Clowns is definitely up there for a horror movie.
It's awesome.
There's a couple of soundtracks you recognize immediately. Halloween, the music from Halloween, The Exorcist you recognize. But as far as songs that are like, this is the Halloween movie, like that kind of thing, Killer Clowns knocks it out of the
You hear
park.
2 notes and you know exactly what song it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about themes in terms
Like
of...
thematic? I think it's too broad, right? Like, of course, Killer Clowns from Outer Space is so original. Going off of Quatermass 1 and 2, like Alien and kind of getting your body sort of taken over, Body Snatchers, Aliens, like that's another kind of fabulous theme. Yeah, I think it's just too broad.
Andrea from the UK writes, just started watching the first season. Again, I love the original release. Please, if you haven't already said this, who is the narrator?
So the narrator is sort of a friend of a friend that worked at this club that we would do events at back in the day.
And he had that
and we're
brilliant British accent. So we're like, when we were writing that part of the show, we're like, wouldn't it be fabulous if he read it?
Yeah, his name is Simon, and I don't know where he is at today. I don't know if you can find him any other fabulous feature films or TV projects, but yes, he was the only person we knew that had a British accent. So we're like, you got the role.
Hi, Simon, if you're listening.
Brett from Nashville asks, I wanted to know if you all have ever listened to the No Sleep podcast, and if so, what are some of your favorite episodes or stories?
I have not, but I know you have, right?
I have. I've been listening to this show since it started, like the OG first season. And in terms of like favorite episodes, I don't totally know because there are so many. But my favorite story is there's a season finale. I think maybe it's season 7 where the characters sort of explore the dark web, and it's like 2 hours, and it terrified me.
Wow.
Love
Interesting.
it.
Do you think that, like, since you were watching from the beginning, does it get better, or was it good from the start, or what do you think?
I love the No Sleep podcast. I think that it really hits its stride in like season 3. And then it's really amazing for like 12 seasons or for like 10 seasons ish. The second and third seasons I've like listened to recently, I feel like there are now stories that are written specifically for the podcast rather than it being like a culmination of the best stories from like that universe. And so I think that the quality is a little bit hit or miss these days. There are episodes I don't love, but overall, if you do like narrative horror fiction podcasts, I would suggest it. Anna from London asks, do you want to get more tattoos? What would you get next and what do they represent to you?
No, I do not want more.
Absolutely not.
If I could snap my fingers and remove every tattoo I have, I would do that.
Really?
Absolutely. I do not want any more tattoos. I don't want the ones I have already.
Would you get them removed?
Well, I am getting some of them removed, actually.
Oh, really?
I am, yeah. Not my back piece, obviously, because the whole reason I have this giant back piece in the first place is because I got a lot of regrettable tattoos over the years when I was younger. And so I was like, this is really before you could get them removed. I'm like, I have to cover them up. Mm-hmm. So this artist that I really like was like, let me come up with this design that I think would, appeal to what your tastes are, but would cover everything up and bring uniformity to everything, which I was about and I liked. But there's no way, I have some on my ankles, my feet, my arms and stuff. So those are the ones that I want to get rid of for sure. I won't get rid of my back piece, but all the other ones, yes, I would remove them.
Yeah, I want to change mine too. Like I'm that person who can't say their favorite movie this and what's their favorite color that. And I'm like, okay, I like these tattoos for a while, but I might like remove 2 and like kind of blast over the other ones. Like, yeah, it's going to change in the coming years.
I kind of think with drag, it's like, you don't want jewelry that you can't take off. And that's what I look at tattoos as. It's like we change our appearance so much and the vibe of what we're trying to put off that it limits you a little bit. Like no matter what, when you see tattoos, a certain kind of aesthetic comes to mind. What about you and your tattoos?
I love my tattoos. I definitely want to get more. For me, it's like, I'm not that person who's like, they have to be super meaningful. Like sometimes I just think it's cool to have. I want to get some hand tattoos, but that's like the big girl move. That's like, if you get a tattoo on your hand, your neck, or your face, you're like, there's no going back. And it's cool. Like I love the way they look, but at the same time, it is sort of like a, hey, mom and dad, look what I got.
Yeah.
And they're already dealing with my nails, so.
This tattoo on my back, you can see it was intended to go up into my hairline and kind of stipple out. My artist moved and like just kind of fell off the face of the earth before we even finished it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But I agree with you. That's a choice. Like your hands and your neck and stuff. I'm like.
Big girl tattoos.
Yeah.
All right, my darlings, that's all the time we have on this episode of Creatures of the Night. Thank you for listening, and prove your love by writing in, subscribing, rating, and reviewing on Apple Podcasts and everywhere where you listen to the best podcasts in the world. Thank you, lovers, and we'll see you next time. The Boulet Brothers Creatures of the Night is hosted and produced by Dracula and Swantula Boulet, along with co-host Ian DeVogler, with music by Neuron Spectre.